D&D horror stories are a great place to go if you think that your table isn't very good and you want to know that other people have it worse out there. This was uploaded to the subreddit D&D horror stories. We can go through it and maybe learn some things that we can do as players or dungeon masters to avoid these types of situations. How a single player's in-character greed destroyed a whole table. I feel like we're gonna get a "that's what my character would do." Hello. This is my first post on Reddit, really. I found this subreddit thanks to a friend of mine who told me about it a week past. The story begins in a humble game shop we began playing at since COVID restrictions were lifted. Once we were all vaccinated, we decided to take up 5e. We were all inspired to play by Critical Role and play the Eberron setting. I really like the Eberron setting. I'm running a campaign out of there currently. Thumbs up on that one. The cast would be me, Joe, Christopher, and finally the one we will refer to as GP. All names are fake, of course. And, of course, our wonderful D&D addicted DM. Is that like a prerequisite to be a dungeon master? You have to be addicted? Anyway, we get past the character creation. Everyone rolls up ordinary characters with, honestly, generic backstories now looking back at it, with the exception of GP. They roll up a barbarian warforged who is single directive, is seeking out a list of people to collect debt from. We thought it was funny at first, but oh, how wrong we were. I don't actually see anything wrong with this backstory. They want to be like a Repo Man type backstory. I could see working with it. I wouldn't have done anything different as the dungeon master. At this point, I generally let people do what they want with their backstories. First few sessions were pretty straightforward. We got the plot hook that took us to Undair to seek out a great wizard for a scroll of 9th level magic that could help turn Droam, that's what we're going with, into a luscious garden after it was pacified by a holy crusading army. As the story progressed, we were each given specific missions that were really dangerous for solo NPCs, and we often would crawl back to the party's tavern bloodied. That's where the trouble started. We actually enjoyed those solo missions and even split into pairs to further our own agendas in Undair while we waited for the wizard to return from his travels. The rogue, of course, stole a bunch from the Merchants Guild along with the bard, making a sizable fortune that would eventually bite them in the butt, resulting in both of the characters cornered in an inescapable room save for the door they came in through. They got caught smack in the middle of a vault because all the guards easily beat the DC 13 hypnotic pattern. They wound up dead and thrown in the city's outskirts with all their gear, but they were stripped of their coin. The DM wanted us to fetch their bodies and presumably resurrect them. That's where the first incident of the barbarian warforged character just stripping them bare. I'm talking he left nothing on their bodies except their underpants. He stole all the magic items with a sneaky sleight of hand roll that our paladin couldn't see/stop. They then hauled the bodies off and got them resurrected, paying from the party's joint Bad Days fund they kept around. One of the things that you should talk about in the session 0 is if there is a party fund. My groups generally have a party fund, so if people need resurrected, we have that. So you don't run into any issues if there's a player that's like, I'm not paying gold to resurrect you. So they do something similar. Okay, that's good. I am curious if someone's planning on stealing items, have them roll sleight of hand for every single magic item they steal. I don't care how well you roll sleight of hand, you're not stripping someone naked without another person noticing. Like, you're just not doing that. I also have another kind of table rule where you can't steal from other players and there's no PvP. I think that will probably play a big role because I'm guessing the greed is he steals their stuff and doesn't give it back. But let's keep reading. Once the characters woke up, of course, they went, "Where's all of our stuff?" Warforged didn't talk. Paladin shrugged and said they found us, or namely the Warforged player who found us before the Paladin, naked. So I guess he stripped them before the Paladin got there, but it said that he rolled sleight of hand, so I'm not sure exactly how that works. They got up, and one bad idea later, they were standing in the same building with the guards that took their stuff and even offered to buy it in installments from the guards. But they said they didn't take anything, mostly scared because 2 nights ago they killed those 2 adventurers that are now sauntering around like nothing happened. Now, this wouldn't be a bad thing if the magic items weren't almost necessary for the 2, for they rolled terribly on their stats, and most of the magic items were taken to make their con higher or increase their dex or charisma. Things they really did need so their characters don't suck, and to their credit, they worked for the better part of 4 months collecting these magic items. Out of character, they spoke and said if the Warforged player would consider selling them back their items, even though they're theirs. But the player shrugged and said, no, he wouldn't really do that. He's a collection Warforged. We said, wasn't he just a debt collector though? And the player smiled and said the Warforged collects anything his master can turn into a profit. Cue a message to the DM sent by the rogue player reading, hey DM, can we at least attempt to take our stuff back? I have 12 con and need that amulet. The DM relented and asked the Warforged player nicely if he could just give back some, not all, just some of the items so the players aren't extremely underpowered compared to the rest of the group, but he simply wouldn't budge. To put things into perspective, he also died more times than both the Bard and Rogue and brought back time and time again with all of his stuff. Never had we taken even a coin from him. So again, this is where I would probably pause the game and be like, hey, we don't really steal from each other. This game is for fun. It's not really cool. I'm expecting, though, that this greedy player will probably have to get kicked out of the table. Let's see how it goes from here. But still, he would not budge, and after some investigating, the Bargain Rogue finally realized that the Warforged stash chest is almost bursting at the seams with items. While they were still just in commoner's clothes and with no weapon or coin, they spoke to the paladin player, who is quite literally a saint in game form, and offered to just give them from his own stash of gold, around 3,000 gold, to go get important gear back. But the players felt embarrassed since we all worked very hard and instead decided just to take a small loan of 100 gold to buy some thieves' tools and weapons and a loot. So they'd steal back their stuff for a lack of better explanation. And to their credit, they stole them back and proudly wore them, leaving a sly note, your master can do without our belongings, in a chest. Admittedly, at the time, it seemed like a light-hearted note, but the Barbarian Warforged took it very seriously. This is the exact reason is why I don't do PvP. Almost always ends up poorly. Probably shouldn't have got this far, but it did, so let's just keep going. He, without a second thought upon the DM informing him of what just happened in his quarters, said, okay, my character marches towards the Bard's PC's room and closes the door. Is she in there? The DM looked at the Bard PC, and the Bard PC said, yes. She was in there composing poetry. With zero regard for the DM's wishes or player feelings, the Warforged player said, I attacked the Bard player with my flaming tongue sword, and immediately rolls, and the DM says, whoa, hold on, Bard player, do you consent to this combat? GP immediately explodes and says, I don't care if she responds, she stole from my automaton character and machines move in one direction. Does a 27 hit her? Again, you don't do this combat. At this point, it's just like just stop the game. We're not having fun. People are getting upset. Put a pause on things. DM raised their eyebrows and shook his head and says, if you don't calm down and stop shouting, I can and will remove you from this table, GP. The paladin, who's GP's friend, tried to calm him down, but at the moment he was visibly livid. Okay, so he did stop the game. I approve of that. Eyes almost bloodshot, red face. He looked like he was about to fight in real life over those magical items. No dice. Ha, sorry, first and last one. He reaches over and grabs the Bard's Mini, which was a custom-made one, 3D printed at the shop. They cost around $34 minus the painting. He throws it across the room, and it shatters against the wall. I feel like this person really wants to emphasize the drama here. The Bard player, who is this very thin girl, hides her face, scared. As a GP tries to go over the table to strangle her, immediately the Paladin player stands up, grabs his friend, and he starts going crazy. He starts going crazy. Kicking the table, flipping it, almost landed on the girl, save for the DM, who's an old firefighter who just holds it with his knees, telling the Paladin player to get a hold of his friend while he lashed out and bit his own childhood friend in a fit of rage about these dang magical items. Had I known that he would have been this violent over, I would have done something differently. Hold up. When somebody responds like this, you don't need to worry about you having done something wrong. It shouldn't matter. If he got that upset, he could have left the table. Anyway, but nevertheless, the shopkeep called the cops, telling them about this 25-year-old fit guy just throwing a violent tantrum directed at a girl who is right to be afraid. At this point, I grab her and the DM and tell them just to walk out. I'd known the Paladin for a while. We just nodded to each other and had to grapple and keep him down until the authorities showed up and placed him in cuffs. We were all caught off by surprise by the whole ordeal and watched as a guy we've known for months just snapped because of such a menial thing. During his thrashing, he managed to destroy several things in the shop, including the rented items like map buildings and stuff, some glassware that's there for decorations and the like. We personally didn't press charges against him, even though the bard player was pretty rattled by the whole thing. We drove her home, and 2 weeks later, we're at the same shop, just sitting around in silence. The DM shook his head and said, "Yeah, let's just stop playing." And we just all nodded, and the paladin player was just shook. Nevertheless, the bard player said she just never wants to play D&D again after that whole ordeal. We stood up and thanked each other for the fun memories and left. That was around 2 months ago, and now the DM is back to playing, albeit being online and using VTTs. I was actually just about to say, if you're afraid of playing with people in person, online is a great alternative. The bard girl still hangs out with me and Paladin, and we just watch movies and game. However, GP's greediness managed to land him in a 4-month sentence in jail because his father just refused to pay for his son's lawyer after seeing the tape of the whole incident. All is well again. I don't think I'll ever play D&D again IRL without a longsword strapped to my belt, but I'll live. Man, that is a horror story right there. It kind of sucks to see people want to stop playing D&D because of a bad player and a bad experience. But this is why things like Session Zero are so important. And if you've not played with a bunch of random people and may not understand the importance of establishing ground rules, this is why. This is why I don't allow PvP. I don't want it to escalate into things, and I've pretty much never seen it end well. I also have another rule where they have to equally split all of the loot that they get, because things can get kind of weird if you have like rogues that are trying to steal loot ahead of everyone else. Table rule, none of that's allowed for me. Even if you don't have that rule established when someone's doing something that's upsetting everyone, just pause the game right then and be like, before we play, let's get this worked out. Because you never want it to escalate to the point where people are quitting D&D forever. All right, well, that's all I have. Hope you enjoyed.